Hello, friends. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for another midweek meditation. Today, our text is Revelation chapter 16, verses 12 through 21, in which we see the pouring out of the sixth and seventh bowls of the wrath of God against his enemies. These two bowls concern a great battle that's going to occur at the very end of the last days, a battle called Armageddon. Before we begin to dig into these verses, I want to remind you that as we've been looking at this vision, we have constantly been reminded of the Exodus from Egypt. The Exodus was a shadow of, a picture of what will happen at the end of the last days, shortly before the return of Christ. With that in mind, listen to how verse 12 begins. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way. We're told that this sixth bowl is poured out via a river drying up to form a path, to form a way of travel. Now, I ask you, when else have we seen the wrath of God poured out via water drying up to form a path? The answer, of course, is the Exodus. You might remember that the people of God were trapped between the Red Sea and the large army of Pharaoh. It looked like the people of God were going to be entirely wiped out. But then God dried up and formed a path in the Red Sea. And that path provided two purposes. One, it provided the people of God a way of escape. And second, that path brought the army of Pharaoh to its utter defeat. That's very similar to what we see in this vision. Listen to verses 12 through 16. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw, coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. For they are demonic spirits, performing signs, who go abroad to the kings of the whole world to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be exposed. And they assembled them at the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. We see in this vision, God provide a dry path. That dry path is used by the false trinity of the dragon to gather together the kings of the world, all the kings of the world for battle. We learned about the false trinity of the dragon in chapter 13, so I'm not going to explain that today. The false trinity uses great signs to deceive the kings and gather them together as one large army. Now, when this army comes against God's people, the church, it's going to appear as if the church is in a hopeless situation. Just like it looked as if the Israelites were in a hopeless situation at the Red Sea when the army of Pharaoh came against it, so it is going to look as if God's people, the church, is in a hopeless situation when this army is gathered together by the dragon. But then suddenly, that event will be the time when the dragon and all who follow him are utterly and finally defeated. For the Lord God is going to appear and fight for his people, just as he fought for his people at the Red Sea. Look at verse 15. It's about the return of Jesus. Jesus himself is going to return to this earth, and he is going to wipe out that army that is gathered together. The seventh bowl shows us a picture of the defeat of that army. Listen to verses 17 through 21. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple from the throne, saying, "It is done. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake such as there had never been since man was on the earth. So great was that earthquake. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great to make her drain the cup of the wine of the fury of his wrath. And every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. And great hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from heaven on people. And they cursed God for the plague of the hail, because the plague was so severe. Notice that the 7th bowl is poured into the air. Why the air, you might wonder? Well, in answer to that question, I'm going to read you 2 verses from the book of Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 say this: "You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience." What I ask you to notice from these verses is that the Apostle Paul calls Satan the prince of the air. So with the 7th bowl, it is Satan and all who follow him, that large army that is being wiped out. We hear the throne say, "It is done," because Satan and all who follow him will be defeated forever. This vision shows us a sudden, violent destruction of Satan's kingdom, his city of Babylon. A great earthquake is mentioned. God drains the cup of the fury of his wrath. Every island flees. Every mountain collapses. Great hailstones fall. This vision is showing us that at the very moment Satan and his followers think that they will deliver a deadly blow against God's people, it is they who will suddenly fall, never to get up. They will be defeated as quickly and decisively as Pharaoh and his army was defeated at the Red Sea. And the people of God will not have to shoot even one arrow in the battle of Armageddon. God's wrath will bring about the victory. Now let me ask you a question. How should Christians respond to this vision, to the knowledge that the battle of Armageddon is approaching? Jesus himself answers the question in our passage. Listen again to the words of Jesus. They are recorded in verse 15. "Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake, keeping his garments on, that he may not go about naked and be seen exposed." There are 2 application points here. First of all, stay awake. Understand what is going on. We've been given this vision so that we might discern what is going on in the world. God is going to create a dry path. The rulers of this world will be gathered together. The rulers of this world are going to become an army against the church. When you see that happening, when you see the world strong and the church appearing to be weak, the church being persecuted, understand what is going on. God is at work. God is preparing for the final battle. Stay awake. Know what's going on. That's one application point. Second, don't be deceived. Don't follow the ways of the world. Don't give in to the world. When the world demands that you give up the truths of the scriptures, don't do it. When the world woos you and calls you to follow its ways, don't do it. Realize that very soon it is the world that will be defeated. Stay awake. Don't be ashamed. That's the application. I encourage you to meditate on that this week. Remember, Jesus will return. He will come like a thief. Be ready. Be awake. Don't be ashamed. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week.